All right, back here on SportsLine tonight, getting set for the Titans and Bengals Saturday afternoon in the divisional round at Nissan Stadium. Kickoff at 3:30. Don't forget, we get you set for the game Friday night, 6:30, our Road to the Championship special over on News Channel 5, including the world premiere of Tighten Up from John Rich and Cowboy Troy, getting you set for the big game. We'll have full post-game coverage as well as soon as CBS signs off from the national broadcast. Get you all the way through divisional weekend. We hope into the AFC Championship game and beyond. Headed off to Super Bowl 56 in Los Angeles. Again, the Bengals winning a playoff game for the first time in 31 years on Saturday night against the Raiders. And then with the other results of the weekend, the Bills holding off the Patriots, actually dominating the Patriots in Buffalo in that frigid game up there in Orchard Park. And then the Chiefs ending the career in all likelihood of Ben Roethlisberger and bouncing the Steelers from the playoffs. Means it's the Bengals as the 4 seed and the number 1 seed Titans in the divisional round. And here was our instant reaction to that matchup Sunday night on the Electric Power Company Sunday Sports Central.
And with that, we welcome you into the Electric Power Company Sunday Sports Central. John Burton, Steve Layman here, you there. Thanks for watching. And we're also joined via Zoom, Jonathan Hutton from Outkick. So after spending Wild Card Weekend, just like the rest of us watching football at home or here in the office, like us, the Titans finally know who they'll face in next week's divisional playoff round. What are your initial thoughts on the matchup, Jay Hutt?
Well, the Titans are going to have to defend a really potent passing game from the Bengals. They did not handle that well, John, last season, and now they're even better. Speaking of Cincinnati, it is Burrow against the Titans defense, but Henry is back, and I believe they can really hammer away at that Cincinnati defense with the Titans run game. The matchup is this: can the Titans run the ball to take the ball away from Burrow and his weapons? That's what this game comes down to.
Yeah, Jonathan, the Titans didn't face the Bengals this season, but we have seen a ton of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. How do you make that passing game for Cincinnati uncomfortable?
Well, Cincinnati has multiple weapons, and the Titans have to be able to cover them up. And the best remedy is to be able to get to Burrow with 4 and then cover with 7. No quarterback was sacked more than Joe Burrow this season. He was sacked 51 times. So defenses have been able to get to him, and the Titans have been much better in their pass rush with Dupree, Simmons, Autry, Landry, and others. They can get after the passer and disrupt this rhythm. They cannot let Jamar Chase take the game over. And honestly, Steve, the best way to take care of the passing game with Cincinnati is for the Titans to control the ball on offense, limit their series, ball possession, red zone offense for the Titans. That is critical, massive in this matchup.
You're working on yourself. You're working on your craft. So a lot of times you don't have the time to focus on the little small details in the middle of the season because you're always worrying about scheme. You're worried about the next post. This is the time that we can focus on the small details.
Use the time to your advantage, then you come ready to go the next week when it's time to prepare. I think that's our mindset as a team, is to take advantage of this time, and then once we know who we're playing and it can fully come to work next week and go all in, we're going to do that and be excited to go win one game.
The numbers are on the Titans' side. More than 50% of 1 seeds have reached the Super Bowl, including 11 of the past 16 in the last 8 years. But the Titans know that the 1 seed is no guarantee. The Titans lost coming off the bye as the 1 seed twice to the Ravens in 2000 and 2008, and more recently turned the tables by going to Baltimore 2 years ago and winning.
They was a 1 seed, 14-2, and we went up there and destroyed them boys pretty much for the entire game. So we don't want to go up there with that type of mentality. Like, hey, we got a week off. We can play the home game. That stuff doesn't matter once once they keep the ball off.
Well, fellas, our guy Keith Bullock knows all about the challenge of having the bye and the pressure that comes with the number 1 seed and then jumping right into the playoffs cold against a team that's hot and has already won a game. But Jonathan, given the Titans' injuries this year, the benefits of the bye far outweigh the disadvantage, right?
Absolutely, Steve. The week off is massive for this team. It's been an unprecedented year for injuries, and even the guys who finished the season weren't completely healthy. There's not a team in the league who would opt to play in Wild Card Weekend just because they're hot going into the postseason. The buys matter. Last 8 years, The AFC representative has reached the Super Bowl, and they all benefited from the bye week by doing so. And as for the Titans, Derrick Henry would have played this week. He now gets that extra week of rest, but there's not a negative to having the number 1 seed. Some would say rust. I would say the Titans control how they come out and play next week and whether or not they played this weekend or not.
Now, you heard the Titans say they focused on themselves this week. Mike Vrabel gave every player one thing to focus on individually to get better. But I ask you guys, what's the one thing you want to see from this team to improve on in the playoffs?
Well, for me, the biggest thing for this team is to continue their trend of ball security. Collectively, Vrabel preaches that week after week, practice after practice. And on defense, it's about creating more turnovers. That's been the emphasis over the last month. And it will continue to be the theme going into the divisional round as a team. We can always say tackle better or watch the penalties or get more yards after the catch, but the Titans can make a legitimate run to the title if they limit giveaways and then they up their takeaways.
I'll throw my answer in. It's explosiveness in the passing game.
I like it. It's down to the Elite 8 now in the NFL, and the Titans are right there with a great look at it.
I think that's a huge key for the Titans offensively. They have been better. They've taken care of the football. But even down the stretch of the season when they were winning again, we didn't see the explosive type of plays. And frankly, we haven't seen the explosiveness from this offense that I think we thought we'd see the entire year. Derrick Henry missed 9 games. He obviously had explosive plays early on in the running game that they haven't had as much of late in the year. But in the passing game, other than a couple big plays to A.J. Brown, it's been kind of a dink and dunk and possession type of passing game all season. And I think a huge part of that goes to the injuries early to the wide receivers. You didn't have those guys out there when Derrick Henry was running, and you would want to build off of him. And then Derrick Henry going down. So even when ultimately the health came back to some degree at the wide receiver position, and you got Brown and Jones back on the field, teams didn't have to respect the run quite as much. So to me, that's the challenge for the offense now. I think they're going to be able to run the football. I especially think they're going to be able to run the football against Cincinnati. At least they better be able to. I think A.J. Brown and Julio Jones can get open. The question for me is, can Ryan Tannehill find some of those explosive plays down the field? Can they hit that play action first down pass that goes for 40? Can they hit the bomb that goes for a touchdown? Can they take the top off the defense in that way, in a way that we really haven't seen throughout the entire course of the season? That, to me, is the next step for the offense. The offense obviously has to take care of the ball. They can't have penalties. They need to stay ahead of the chains. That all goes without saying. They want to run the football. That's who they are. It's in their identity. But for this offense to take it to the next level, and remember last year, you're talking about an offense a year ago that averaged 30 points a game. It was truly one of the elite offenses in all of the NFL, and that was without Julio Jones. This year, because of all the injuries, including to Jones and including to Henry, the Titans have averaged much less than that. They're in the low 20s in terms of what they're averaging a game from a scoring offense. And think about it this way. When Derrick Henry's out of the game, so this is what you hope changes this weekend. When Derrick Henry's out of the game, the Titans average roughly 21 points per game. When he's in the game, it's more than 28. They average a touchdown more per game with King Henry in the backfield. That may not be like a shocking revelation that a guy who could have been in the MVP discussion as a running back in the NFL means that much to the offense, but it does show you exactly what type of a value he has in terms of points on the board. The Titans average more than a touchdown a game more when Henry's out there. And it's not just because of his running. The Titans have actually stayed fairly effective running the football, even with him out. But they've done it against fronts that weren't quite as stacked. They've done it when people weren't expecting them to run quite as much. And they weren't doing it by taking that top off the defense or hitting the explosive play offensively. That's the way they take this offense back to another level. Henry comes in, the defense has to adapt to that or get run over. And when they do, that I think is when you find the explosiveness back in the passing game. We'll see if it comes to fruition, but that to me is a huge key about this offense taking itself to the next level. Let's go to the phones here. Say hello to Mary. Mary, good evening and welcome to SportsLine.
Larry.
Larry, sorry.
Yes, that's all right.
Yep.
I know Tannehill is as good a quarterback as there is, but if you don't have a good line, the line is where it's at. You can take a mediocre quarterback and make him look terrific if you've got a terrific line. If you've not got a terrific line, I don't care how good a quarterback you got, it's going to be tough. The game is won or lost in the offensive line and the defensive line.
Yeah.
That's my comment.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right, Larry, and sorry for the name confusion off the top there. That has always been the true about the game of football at any level, whether you're talking Pop Warner or high school or college and even in the NFL. You can have all the #1 draft picks. You can have all the 5-star recruits. You can have the skill on the outside or a quarterback or a running back. But if you can't control the line of scrimmage, you're not winning. It's just not happening. I mean, even go back to the national championship game. Alabama and Georgia in college football. The first time they played in the SEC title game, Alabama was able to, I think, win the line of scrimmage, but at the very least, they were able to hold off a Georgia defensive front that we talked all year about being maybe the most dominant and physically imposing front we've ever seen in college football. Alabama was able to hold them at bay. They got no sacks on Bryce Young in the SEC title game. And Bryce Young had the game of his career. He won the Heisman Trophy in that moment by carving them up and got Alabama the 1 seed. They play again a month later in the national championship game, and that Georgia defense won the day. The D-line dominated the trenches. The Alabama offense looked completely different in that game, and Georgia wins the national championship. Same two teams, a month apart, difference of what happened in the trenches. It absolutely is a game that's won there. And when you talk about the Titans and you talk about their improvement, because remember, it wasn't all that long ago that the Titans were one of the worst teams in the NFL. They were the worst team record-wise in back-to-back seasons. Since then, they've had 6 consecutive winning years. They're now into the playoffs for the 3rd straight year and 4th time in 5 years. They've won back-to-back division titles for the first time since the beginning of the franchise, way back in the days of the Houston Oilers. It's a remarkable turnaround when you think about it. Only the Chiefs have more consecutive winning seasons now than the Titans do. And it's all started for them in the trenches. It started with Mike Mularkey as head coach and John Robinson. And it is continued with Mike Vrabel. It is about winning in the trenches and being the more physical football team. And the Titans have done that again this year, even with Derrick Henry out. They have been physical with teams, and they've won that battle most of the time. And the defense, by the way, is much, much improved in that area. It absolutely is a key. And if there is a concern about the offensive line, it's the number of sacks they've allowed this year. I think some of that has to do with the injuries up front on the O-line. I think some of it has to do with playing without wide receivers that you could trust at times throughout the year. And some of it was just not great play. They've been better as of late, and the most encouraging thing for the Titans is the fact that that offensive line has played the entire last 2 games. Through 15 games, there was a concern about the fact that they had not been able to start a game and finish the game all year. They may have had the starting 5, but they didn't end that way. They finally did that at the end of the season, these 2 games in January, and now you go into the playoffs with those guys healthy. And I think that helps you in that regard. But there's no question. You have to win in the trenches. Again, go back, another example. The Titans in the playoffs in 2019, when they made that run to the AFC Championship game, they bullied the Patriots. They bullied the Ravens. They were the more physical football team. Last year, they weren't against the Ravens. The Ravens beat them at the line of scrimmage last year, and that was it. And that's going to be the key against Saturday. If the Titans can do that, and I think it's fair to expect them to, given the shape of the 2 teams' lines and how they're built up front, if the Titans can do that, I think they win the game. If they struggle in that regard, then you have some concerns because Cincinnati does have talent. They do have talent. They've got arm talent in Joe Burrow, and they've got big play talent on the outside with those wide receivers. That absolutely is where this starts for the Titans, by being physical and winning the battle in the trenches. We'll talk more about this Titans team. We'll get back to your phone calls as well. 737-7767, the number. SportsLine continues right after this.